My wife cheated on me with her boss, then filed a false police report claiming I assaulted her, a scheme to keep her $200, $0 inheritance in my family home. I never thought her betrayal would lead to such a legal nightmare. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Lisa, would betray me so blatantly and then turn around and try to ruin me with lies. The most shocking part, I stumbled on her affair almost by accident, something so mundane, yet it shattered my entire world in an instant. Honestly, I was thinking everything was fine, that we had a good marriage. Turns out I was blind to the signs, or maybe I just didn't want to see them. It all started about 3 months ago. Lisa had been acting a little distant, more irritable than usual. She'd come home late from work, sometimes claiming she had to stay extra hours at the office. She'd get defensive when I asked questions, snapping that I was paranoid and overthinking everything. I noticed her phone was always locked, and she'd hide it whenever I entered a room. Little things, but I brushed them aside, trusting her, or maybe just ignoring the signs because I didn't want to confront reality. Then one day, I decided to check her phone out of curiosity. I know, bad move. But I've been feeling uneasy for weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I found a message thread with a number I didn't recognize, and the texts were flirtatious, suggestive, even explicit at times. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one read. "Miss you already," another one said. My stomach dropped. I knew then that she was cheating, and it wasn't just a fling. This was serious. I confronted her that night, expecting her to deny it, to come up with some bullshit excuse. Instead, she looked me right in the eyes and lied without blinking. Said it was just harmless flirting, that her boss, Mark, was just a colleague, and that I was overreacting. She called me paranoid, accused me of snooping, and claimed I was jealous of her success at work. It was obvious she was trying to gaslight me, but I wasn't buying it. I had the proof right in my hands. What hit me hardest was her reaction, how cool and dismissive she was about the whole thing, like she didn't care that she was caught. She even had the nerve to say, "You're just insecure," when I was trembling with rage and heartbreak. I never thought my wife, the woman I married, would betray me this way. And to make things worse, she started throwing in some wild accusations, saying I was abusive, that I had hit her, that I was violent. All lies. Just another way for her to cover her tracks and keep her inheritance, I guess. The money thing is another layer to this nightmare. Lisa inherited a hefty sum, around $200, $0, and she's always been obsessed with money, control, and status. She's constantly talking about how she deserves more, how she's entitled to a better life. And now I realize she's been scheming to keep that inheritance, along with our family home, which she's always seen as her prized possession. I felt like I was just a pawn in her game, a means to an end, while she plotted her escape with Mark and my money. After that confrontation, I felt numb. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how she could do this to me, to us. I was hurt, furious, and confused all at once. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that maybe I'd misinterpreted the signs. But the evidence was undeniable. I knew then that I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't stay silent, not after she'd lied and accused me of things I didn't do. That night I stayed up, thinking about all the years we'd been together, our wedding, our plans, the future I thought we'd share. It all felt like a lie now. I felt betrayed in every possible way. My mind kept racing. How do I fight back? Do I confront her again? Do I go to the police? Or do I just cut my losses and walk away? The anger in me started to simmer, but beneath that, there was a dark resolve forming. Whatever happened next, I knew I had to come out on top. I had to protect what was mine, my money, my reputation, my dignity. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much darker game. After that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around what I'd found and what it all meant. The next morning, I decided I needed to get some clarity, so I started digging into her recent bank statements and emails. I wanted to see if I could find more concrete proof, something I could use if I decided to confront her again or take legal action. What I uncovered was even worse than I thought. Lisa had been funneling money into secret accounts, accounts I didn't even know existed. She'd been withdrawing chunks of that inheritance, trying to hide it from me. It was clear she was planning something, and her entire demeanor was colder and more calculating than I'd ever seen. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fling. She was actively scheming to keep her money and her lifestyle no matter what it took. I started feeling angry but also scared. I'd always trusted her. We built a life together, nice house, decent savings, plans for retirement. But now I saw her for what she really was: manipulative, greedy, and willing to lie through her teeth to get what she wanted. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd brush off my questions like they were nuisances. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time smarter. I didn't want her to catch me off guard. I started recording her calls secretly, just in case. I also reached out to a private investigator I knew from a friend, someone discreet who could follow her without raising suspicion. The plan was to find out who she was really seeing, where she was going, and what exactly she was up to. I felt a mix of dread and determination. I had to get to the bottom of this, even if it meant tearing apart everything I'd ever believed about us. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting more bitchy and dismissive than ever. She'd throw tantrums over small things, accusing me of trust issues, calling me paranoid, and saying I was crazy for suspecting her. She'd lie to my face, saying she was working late, that she loved me, that I was just jealous. But I knew better. Her body language, her tone, the way she'd avoid eye contact, it all screamed guilt. Every time she snapped at me, I felt a surge of revulsion. How could she be so manipulative, so cold? One day, I caught her in a lie. She told me she was at her office, but I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant, the kind I knew she'd never go to alone. I confronted her about it, and she just rolled her eyes, laughed dismissively, and said, "Oh, that's just a business dinner. You're making a big deal out of nothing." That was the moment I realized she was lying about everything. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I was starting to see through it all. The emotional toll was heavy. I'd go from feeling furious to feeling numb, then back to rage again. I couldn't believe I'd been married to a woman capable of such deception. I'd always thought she was ambitious and strong, but now I saw her for what she really was: greedy, selfish, and willing to betray her vows for a shot at more money and status. It hurt to think I'd been so blind for so long, that I'd trusted her blindly, only to find out she'd been plotting against me all along. At the same time, I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to do something. I started gathering all the evidence I could: screenshots of her messages, bank statements, the recordings from her calls. I was preparing for the worst, because I knew this wasn't going to blow over easily. She was dangerous in her own way, willing to lie, cheat, and even accuse me of violence just to save herself and her precious inheritance. That's when I decided I'd had enough of her lies. I was going to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out on the table. I wanted her to know I was onto her, that I had proof. I also knew I needed to protect myself legally. If she was willing to lie about me hitting her, I had to be ready for anything. I started researching lawyers and how to file for divorce, because I knew I couldn't stay married to someone so deceitful. The betrayal cut too deep, and I was done pretending. Everything was okay. In that moment, I realized that I was at a crossroads. Either I let her keep her secrets and her money, or I fought back with everything I had. I wasn't going to let her destroy my reputation, my life, or my future without a fight. She thought she was clever, that her lies would keep her safe, but I was determined to expose her for who she really was. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this lie. It was time to take control, and that's exactly what I planned to do. After gathering everything I could, screenshots, bank statements, recordings, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I had the evidence to expose her, but I also understood that once I made my move, there'd be no turning back. Lisa, being the manipulative bitch she was, had already started turning the tables. She'd begun to act even more hostile, throwing tantrums, accusing me of stalking her, and claiming I was just paranoid. Honestly, her behavior was so over the top it was almost laughable, if it weren't so heartbreaking. One afternoon, I decided I'd had enough of the silent waiting game. I called her into the living room, sat her down, and laid everything out on the table. I told her I knew about the secret accounts, the affair with Mark, the money she'd been siphoning off. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "You're crazy," she snapped. "You have no proof. You're just jealous and insecure. Maybe if you weren't so paranoid, you'd see that I still love you." I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You've been lying to me from the start. I have everything on record. The affair, the secret accounts, the texts. I know you've been planning to leave with your boss and keep everything for yourself. And I'm done playing nice." Her face twisted into a sneer and she spat. "You're just a clueless idiot. You think you can threaten me. I've got the inheritance, the house, everything. You're nothing but a broke, jealous loser who can't keep his wife happy. You're lucky I even stayed with you this long." That's when I saw her true colors: venomous, greedy, utterly ruthless. I felt a burst of rage. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I saw her for what she really was: a spoiled, manipulative woman who'd do anything to get her way. I told her I was going to file for divorce, that I'd take her to court over the inheritance and the house, and that I'd fight her for custody of any assets she tried to hide. Her response was to scream, "You'll regret this. I'll ruin you. I'll call the police and say you assaulted me just like I've been threatening." It hit me like a slap in the face. She was trying to set me up. I knew she'd lied before, but now it was clear she was willing to go to any length, lying, scheming, even making false accusations, to keep her money and punish me. In the days that followed, her behavior only got worse. She began to act like a victim, crying and calling me abusive behind my back, trying to paint me as the villain. Meanwhile, I kept gathering more evidence, documenting everything she said and did. I contacted a lawyer, started the divorce proceedings, and prepared myself for the legal battle ahead. I knew she'd try to twist everything, so I had be meticulous. What really shook me was when she accused me of hitting her, claiming I'd assaulted her during one of our heated arguments. She even filed a false police report. I was stunned. I'd never laid a finger on her, but now I was facing the possibility of being falsely accused of violence, which could ruin my reputation and even land me in jail. I had to think fast, so I hired a private investigator to find out if she'd been talking to the police or anyone else about this. I couldn't let her get away with it. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, acting innocent, pretending she was the victim. She'd cry about how I was abusing her, how I was controlling, all the while secretly sneaking around, planning her escape with Mark and the inheritance. It was as if she was trying to turn everyone against me to make me look like the bad guy. But I had my evidence, and I was ready to fight back. The most frustrating part was feeling so powerless. I wanted to confront her directly, to scream at her, to tell her how much I hated her for what she was doing. But I knew I had to stay calm, collected, and strategic. If I lost my temper, I risked giving her ammunition. Instead, I focused on building my case, protecting myself legally, and preparing for what was coming next. I also started reaching out to friends and family, telling them bits and pieces of the truth. I needed witnesses. I needed allies because I knew she'd try to smear me as the crazy, jealous husband. She'd lie, twist facts, and do everything she could to get the upper hand. That's why I had to be meticulous, to document everything and to keep my head clear. Honestly, I never thought I'd be in this situation, married, supposedly happy, and then by a woman I loved who turned out to be so ruthless. It's a strange feeling, part heartbreak, part anger, part determination. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones capable of the worst lies. But I also learned that I can fight back, that I can stand my ground, and that I don't have to be a victim of her schemes. I just hope I can come out of this with some dignity intact. The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I thought I had a handle on things, she'd throw another curveball. Her acting out became more aggressive, more desperate. She'd call me names, scream at me about how I was ruining her life, how I was jealous and insecure and trying to control her. It was like watching a storm brew, and I knew I had to stay calm, keep my head clear, and continue gathering evidence. But inside, I was boiling with anger and frustration. One particular day, she went over the edge. She stormed into the living room, crying and wailing, claiming I had assaulted her during a heated argument the night before. She said I'd hit her, pushed her, and that I'd been violent. I was stunned. I knew I hadn't laid a finger on her, but her tears and accusations made it seem like I was the worst person alive. She even threatened to call the police, to have me arrested, to destroy my reputation completely. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted my lawyer immediately, explaining the situation and providing all the evidence I had. We decided I should record everything she said from then on, just in case she tried to escalate her lies further. I also hired a private investigator to watch her, to see if she was talking to police or anyone else about framing me. I couldn't let her get away with this. Her false accusations could ruin me, and I had to protect myself. Meanwhile, she was trying to manipulate everyone around her, friends, family, even her boss, Mark. She'd call them, crying and claiming I was abusive, that I'd attacked her. She'd spin stories, twist facts, and paint herself as the innocent victim. It was sickening. I saw through her act, but I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't let her manipulate the system or people I cared about. On top of that, I found out she'd been contacting her lawyer behind my back, trying to push through a quick divorce so she could get her hands on the inheritance and the house before I could do anything. That was the last straw. I realized her plan was to leave me with nothing, no house, no money, no future, and she'd do whatever it took to make that happen. I started documenting every interaction with her, every lie, every tantrum. I kept a detailed journal, recording dates, times, what was said, what was done. I knew that if this went to court, I'd need a clear timeline. I also reached out to some friends who knew our situation, asking them to be witnesses if needed. I wasn't about to let her destroy everything we'd built without a fight. One night she finally admitted, well, not really admitted, but hinted that she'd been having an affair with Mark. She said it was just sex, that she didn't love him, that it was nothing serious. But I knew better. The way she said it, the way she looked at me with that cold smirk, told me everything I needed to know. That was the moment I decided that I'd had enough. I was going to fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for what was mine. I also made arrangements to move out of the house temporarily, just in case she decided to escalate her lies or make false accusations. I didn't want to be caught off guard. I wanted to be ready for whatever she threw at me. It was a strange feeling, being forced to leave the home I'd worked so hard for, while she stayed there, scheming and plotting her next move. Throughout all this, I kept asking myself how it all went wrong. I loved her once, thought she was my partner, my best friend. But now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for money and status. Her betrayal cut so deep I doubted I'd ever fully recover, but I also knew I had to stay strong. For myself, for the truth, and for whatever future I could still salvage. I also started to realize that her threats to call the police and accuse me of assault might be her way of trying to scare me into backing off. I knew I needed to prepare for that possibility. I talked to my lawyer about how to respond if she did make a false report, and I started collecting witnesses and evidence that could prove my innocence. I was determined not to let her manipulate her way out of this. Honestly, I felt a mix of exhaustion and resolve. Every day was a battle between her lies and my truth. But I also saw the cracks in her facade, the moments when she slipped up, the little things she said that revealed her desperation. I knew I was close to exposing her fully, and I was ready for the final fight. I just wanted her to know that I wasn't going to be her pawn anymore, that I was going to fight to keep what was mine and put an end to her manipulations. The tension in the house was unbearable now. Lisa's behavior grew more erratic, her tantrums more frequent. She'd scream at me for trying to control her, even though I was just trying to protect myself and gather evidence. Her lies were becoming more elaborate. She'd call friends, fake tears, pretend to be the innocent victim while I was the villain. I could see her desperation, and honestly, it scared me. She was capable of anything, and I knew I had to stay one step ahead. One evening, she got even more aggressive. She barged into my room, crying and shouting that I'd hurt her during a supposed argument. She claimed I'd pushed her, shoved her, and that I was violent. I was stunned. I hadn't touched her, never raised a hand in anger, but her accusations were so believable, so emotional, that even I started questioning myself. I knew she was faking it, but I also knew I had to be careful. That night, I decided I had to make a move. I contacted my lawyer again, told him everything, and asked for advice. We agreed I should record her accusations, just in case she tried to escalate things further. I turned on my phone's voice recorder and kept it running discreetly. I knew she'd try to manipulate the system, so I had to be prepared. Meanwhile, I learned she'd been secretly talking to her lawyer, probably trying to speed up the divorce process and secure her inheritance before I could contest it. She'd also been contacting Mark more often, planning her escape. I found evidence of secret meetings, texts, and even a few phone calls she hadn't deleted. It was clear she was trying to cut me out of the picture entirely. One day, she flat out told me she was leaving. Said she'd had enough of my paranoia and that she deserved more than a stressed-out, insecure husband. I was furious but kept my composure. I knew this was part of her scheme, to make me look unstable so I'd lose my case. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I decided I'd fight her in court, expose her lies, and protect my rights. The hardest part was watching her try to turn everyone against me. She'd call her friends, crying about how I'd abused her, how I was controlling, and how I was threatening her. I knew she was lying, but I also knew her words could be damaging if they reached the wrong ears. I started documenting every interaction, every lie, every attempt to manipulate others. I wanted to have a solid case, something that would stand up in court. Things escalated when she filed a police report claiming I'd assaulted her during one of our fights. I was stunned when I heard. She even said I'd hit her, which was a complete lie. I had never laid a hand on her. The police came, took her statement, and then came to interview me. I stayed calm, provided my evidence, and explained the situation. I knew she was trying to set me up, but I also knew I could prove my innocence. I hired a private investigator to follow her around after that. I needed to know if she was talking to the police, if she was meeting Mark, or if she was planning to run away with her money. It was a tense few weeks, but I kept my nerve. I also started preparing for the worst, getting legal documents in order, talking to other lawyers, and making sure I had witnesses ready if she tried to lie her way out of this. Deep down, I was exhausted, emotionally drained from the constant of betrayal, lies, and manipulation. But I also felt a stubborn resolve growing inside me. I was not going to let her destroy me, not after everything we'd been through. I'd fought for my marriage, but I knew now that she'd already checked out. Her focus was only on protecting her money, her inheritance, and her freedom. I was just collateral damage in her game. I also realized that I had to protect my reputation above everything else. If she succeeded in her lies, I could lose everything: my job, my credibility, my future. So I kept meticulous records, stayed firm, and prepared for the legal battle. Ahead, I knew this was only the beginning, but I was determined to see it through. I'd been betrayed so deeply, but I also knew that I had the strength to fight back. I just had to hold on a little longer and stay true to myself. The final weeks felt like a war of attrition. Lisa's manipulations reached new heights. She was calling friends, making tearful accusations, and trying to paint me as the villain at every turn. I stayed quiet, focused on my evidence, and kept my lawyer updated. I knew her goal was to spin enough lies to sway public opinion or sway the court to her favor. But I had the truth, and I was ready to fight for it. One day, I finally got a call from my lawyer. The evidence I'd collected, combined with the witness statements and the recordings, was enough to file a formal restraining order and push forward with the divorce. The court documents detailed her lies, her secret accounts, her affair with Mark, and her false police report accusing me of assault. It was a long, exhausting process, but I knew I was doing the right thing. The day I when a court was surreal. Lisa was there trying to look innocent, but her eyes betrayed her. She was pale, desperate, and furious. I sat through the hearings, hearing her lie, seeing her try to manipulate the judge. But I had everything: my recordings, bank statements, witness affidavits. When it was my turn, I laid out the truth clearly and calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself. The judge didn't buy her story. She was ordered to stay away from me, and her claims of assault were dismissed. The court also awarded me full custody of the house and the inheritance, with strict stipulations that she couldn't contact me or interfere. The judge emphasized that her lies and manipulations were unacceptable, and that her attempt to manipulate the legal system was punishable. After the court ruling, Lisa's facade finally cracked. She screamed and cursed, trying to threaten me with more lies, but it was clear she had no leverage left. She had lost her grip on her lies, and her schemes had backfired spectacularly. I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with sadness for what could have been. I had fought for my dignity, my reputation, and my future, and I'd come out victorious. In the aftermath, I took a long, hard look at myself. The betrayal had changed me. I wasn't the same naive man I'd been before. I'd learned that trust can be shattered in an instant, and that some people are willing to destroy everything for money and greed. But I also learned that resilience and honesty are powerful. I rebuilt my life slowly, step by step, focusing on healing and moving forward. Looking back, I realize I should have seen the warning signs sooner, but part of me still feels betrayed and hurt. Still, I'm grateful I found the strength to stand up, to fight for myself, and to expose the truth. My advice to anyone else in a similar situation is simple: trust your instincts, gather evidence, and never let someone manipulate or lie their way into controlling your life. The truth might be ugly, but it's always worth fighting for. Now, I'm finally at peace. The nightmare is over, and I can finally breathe again. I've learned a lot about betrayal, resilience, and the importance of standing up for yourself. I hope my story serves as a warning and perhaps a lesson in strength to anyone who's ever faced the darkness of betrayal. Because in the end, the truth always has a way of coming out, and justice, though sometimes slow, will find its way.